I met Allison 3 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. She was everything I'd ever wanted, smart, funny, and had this way of making me feel like the most important person in the room. Her smile lit up everything around her, and I was completely captivated from the first moment we talked. Our relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, we were practically living together. Allison was attentive, caring, and seemed genuinely interested in my life. She'd leave little notes in my lunch, surprise me with tickets to games, and always made time for me despite her busy nursing schedule. My friends thought I'd hit the jackpot. My buddy Jake even joked that she must have some serious flaw I wasn't seeing because nobody could be that perfect. We laughed it off, but those words would come back to haunt me. When I proposed after a year and a half of dating, Allison cried and said it was the happiest day of her life. The wedding planning was stressful, but she handled most of it. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. She became more controlling about everything: what I wore, who I spent time with, even how I arranged my own apartment. It's just wedding stress, I told myself. Once we're married, things will settle down. The wedding was beautiful. Expensive, but beautiful. Allison wanted everything to be Instagram perfect. We went into debt for it, but she insisted it was worth it. We only get married once, she said. The honeymoon in Cancun was amazing, the last truly happy memory I have of us together. When we returned home to start our married life, it was like a switch had flipped. Allison became distant, constantly on her phone, and irritable about every little thing. At first, I thought it was post-wedding blues. I tried to be understanding, giving her space while also planning date nights and surprising her with little gifts. Nothing seemed to work. She'd snap at me for breathing too loudly or leave the house without telling me where she was going. About 3 months into our marriage, she started coming home late from work. When I asked about it, she'd say she was picking up extra shifts or having drinks with coworkers. I wanted to believe her, but the excuses became more frequent and less convincing. Then came the lipstick that wasn't her shade, the unfamiliar cologne I caught a whiff of on her clothes, and text notifications she'd quickly hide when I walked into the room. When I finally gathered the courage to check her phone while she was in the shower, my world collapsed. There were hundreds of messages between her and someone saved as work mic. They weren't just friendly texts. They were explicit, intimate, and had been going on since before our wedding. I confronted her that night, hoping for remorse, an explanation, anything that would help me make sense of what was happening. Instead, she exploded in anger, accusing me of invading her privacy and being controlling. "You're suffocating me, Mark. I'm a grown woman. I don't need to report my every movement to you." She stormed out and didn't come home until the next morning, refusing to tell me where she'd been. That was 2 months ago, and things have only gotten worse since then. The night I discovered Allison's text was just the beginning of my downward spiral. After her initial explosion, she switched tactics completely. She cried, apologized, and swore it was just harmless flirting that got out of hand. She promised it would never happen again and begged me not to throw away our marriage over one mistake. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. We went to counseling twice, but Allison always found reasons to cancel subsequent appointments. "The therapist doesn't understand our dynamic," she'd say, or "we can work this out ourselves." Foolishly, I agreed. For a few weeks, things seemed better. She was more attentive, more like the woman I'd fallen in love with. Then I noticed her girls' nights were becoming more frequent. She'd come home at 3 a.m. smelling of alcohol and cigarettes, sometimes with makeup smudged or clothes disheveled. When I'd ask about her night, she'd give vague answers and quickly change the subject. "You're being paranoid, Mark," became her go-to response whenever I questioned anything. "This is why I need space from you." She was masterful at turning every confrontation around, making me feel like I was the unreasonable one for wanting basic honesty in our marriage. The gaslighting was subtle at first, then blatant. She'd deny saying things I'd clearly heard, claim I'd agreed to arrangements we'd never discussed, and insist my memory was faulty when I called her out. I started doubting myself, wondering if I really was as unstable as she suggested. Our finances took a hit too. Allison had always been a spender, but now she was draining our joint account without explanation. When I checked our statements, I found charges for hotel rooms, expensive restaurants I'd never been to, and gifts I'd never received. When confronted, she claimed they were surprise presents for me that she was saving for the right moment or work-related expenses she'd forgotten to submit for reimbursement. My breaking point came last month. I had a business trip scheduled for 3 days. Allison seemed almost eager for me to leave, saying she'd use the time to catch up with friends and reset. Something in her enthusiasm fell off, so I did something I'm not proud of. I cut my trip short by a day without telling her. When I arrived home unexpectedly on Thursday night, I found our apartment transformed. Wine glasses on the coffee table, candles still burning, and the unmistakable sounds of showering from our bathroom. A man's jacket I'd never seen before was draped over our couch. I stood frozen in the living room, my suitcase still in hand, as Allison emerged from the bathroom in just a towel, followed moments later by a tall, well-built man I didn't recognize. The look of shock on her face quickly morphed into anger. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, as if I was the intruder in my own home. "I live here," I managed to say, my voice barely audible even to myself. The man, not even work Mike, but someone completely different, had the decency to look embarrassed as he gathered his things and hurriedly dressed. Allison showed no such shame. She stood defiantly, watching me crumble before her. After he left, the fight that ensued was unlike any we'd had before. She wasn't just defensive, she was cruel. She told me I was boring in bed, that I couldn't satisfy her, that I was a pathetic excuse for a husband who smothered her with neediness. Each word cut deeper than the last. "Did you ever even love me?" I asked when her tirade finally paused. Her response haunts me still. "I loved who I thought you could become." She said it with such cold disappointment, as if my failure to transform into someone else entirely was the real betrayal. That night, I slept on the couch, or rather, lay awake listening to her snore peacefully in our bed. How could she sleep so soundly after shattering everything we'd built? The morning after I caught Allison with that stranger, I expected some kind of fallout, tears, apologies, or even a continuation of the fight. Instead, she acted as if nothing had happened. She made coffee, scrolled through her phone, and asked if I'd pick up dry cleaning on my way home from work. The surreal normalcy was somehow worse than any argument could have been. When I tried to discuss what happened, she sighed dramatically. "Can we not do this right now? I have a headache." That became her standard response anytime I attempted to address our problems. Always a headache, always a wrong time, always a reason why my feelings had to wait. I spent the next few weeks in a daze, going through the motions of life, while feeling completely hollow inside. I lost 15 pounds, couldn't sleep more than a few hours at night, and my performance at work nosedived. My boss pulled me aside to ask if everything was okay at home. I nearly broke down right there in his office. Meanwhile, Allison didn't even try to hide her affairs anymore. She'd answer calls in front of me, speaking in hushed, flirtatious tones before stepping into another room. She'd dress up for work events that somehow never included spouses and return with stories that changed with each retelling. When I finally gathered the courage to tell my parents what was happening, they were devastated. My mom wanted me to leave immediately. My dad, ever the pragmatist, suggested marriage counseling one more time. "People make mistakes, son," he said. "Sometimes big ones. But if you still love her," did I still love her? The question kept me awake at night. I loved who I thought she was. I loved the woman who left sweet notes in my lunch and laughed at my terrible jokes. That woman seemed to have vanished, replaced by a cruel stranger wearing my wife's face. I agreed to one final attempt at counseling. Only this time I insisted on choosing the therapist. Allison reluctantly agreed, though she showed up late to our first session and spent most of it on her phone. The therapist, a kind but no-nonsense woman in her 50s, called her out directly. "Allison, do you want this marriage to work?" Her response was a casual shrug. "I guess, if Mark stops being so controlling." When pressed about her definition of controlling, Allison couldn't provide concrete examples beyond my asking her whereabouts or questioning unexplained expenses, things any reasonable spouse would do. The therapist looked me directly in the eyes at the end of that session and said something that became my wake-up call. "You can't save a marriage alone. Both people have to want it." Last week, I found divorce papers on our kitchen table when I came home from work. Allison had already signed them. Alongside the papers was a note. "This isn't working for either of us. I've moved most of my things to Mike's place. I'll get the rest later." Just like that. 3 years of dating, 1 year of marriage, all the promises we made, reduced to a half-page note and pre-signed divorce papers. I should feel devastated, but what I feel most is relief. The constant anxiety of wondering where she is, who she's with, what lies she'll tell next. It's over. I can finally breathe again. Yesterday, I ran into one of Allison's co-workers at the grocery store. She seemed surprised to see me and awkwardly mentioned how sorry she was about everything. When I asked what she meant, she revealed Allison had been telling colleagues I was abusive and controlling, that she had to escape our marriage. The final betrayal wasn't her affairs or even abandoning our marriage. It was trying to destroy my reputation on her way out. I've learned painful lessons through all this. Red flags don't disappear after marriage. They just become more visible. Love isn't enough when only one person is fighting for the relationship. And sometimes, what feels like the end of everything is actually a painful but necessary new beginning. I don't know what happens next. The divorce will be finalized soon. I'm seeing a therapist on my own now. For the first time in months, I'm starting to recognize myself in the mirror again. My marriage was a disaster, but my life doesn't have to be. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.